designed our weekly video segment to take you into the back shelves of your local video store, back where it says horror videos, and where kids are devouring some awful films that we call the video nasties.
Are you freebasing? Inquiring minds want to know.
I have to break free from this culture of mechanical reproductions and the thick incrustations dying on the surface.
Fuck the prime time, bitch!
Mom with the new flesh.
The pain, I can assure you, will be exquisite. As for our deaths, come with me and be immortal.
We have such sights to show you.
Gotta return some videotapes.
Hello, horror hounds, and welcome to the It Slays podcast. I'm your humble host, Rowan.
I'm Colton.
And it's Jill.
And I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're mic-less.
No, we're not. The audio quality's still fine. I still got my mic and plugged in, ready to go.
Yes, pre-show, you should know, me and Colton just on fire with jokes right now, so...
Yeah, the vibes are off the charts. Jill's been loving it.
Yep.
So I can't wait when Mike gets back for me and him the debate. We always have like the, who has the longest streak of being on the episode or whatever. And I don't think, I think I've only ever missed one main episode.
Yeah, it would definitely be you. You missed one episode and then I had to host it and it was very stressful.
I remember editing it, and Mike, I'm not sure. I feel like he missed one other than this before.
He has, yeah. Probably another Colton pick that you want to dip out on last minute.
But we are back, and it is the new year. Well, it's not the new year for us, but when you're hearing this, it will be the new year. So it's kind of very fitting with the film this evening of future and past selves.
Ooh,
yeah,
nice.
I like that. By the time you listen to this, you'll have heard Now Slane's out the a-hole, a 3-hour long episode that's out. A Nosferatu, a Stream Screams will be out. There's just so many good things out. Me and Colton talking about what we're looking forward to.
I think it's going to do gangbusters. I think that the episode where we talked about what we missed for 3 hours, I think has like a cumulative 10 views. So we're killing it.
Yeah. By the time you listen to this, my guess is that's already gotten into the ear of Joe Rogan. We're on his podcast network right now, and we are actually, as Colton would say, getting ready for our actual mega episode with special guest President Trump.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Jill, it was by Jill's request.
I'm going to leave, actually. You guys can record
None of this
without
is
me.
actually a joke to Jill. We're Canadian, so we're fine, for now, until we're the, 52nd state, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah.
But we know where we're going to start. What have we been consuming? What have we been watching? What have we been listening to? What have we been reading? All that good stuff. What have you been up to? Jill, let's start with you this evening.
Okay. I'll start with what I've been watching. I finally watched Teeth for the first time.
Oh, nice.
Oh, that's like a junior high watch for me, I think, or maybe high school watch. Yeah.
Yeah. I missed out on that when it came out, and it's always been kind of on my list. And I think it was on Tubi or something, so I just threw it on. And it was better than I expected. It was pretty decent. It was okay.
I remember I saw that when I lived in Halifax, so when I first moved out on my own, and there used to be this independent video store called Video Difference in Halifax, Nova Scotia, and it was three stories of just movies. It was glorious, but it was that's where all the film school kids hung out and worked. And Teeth was always recommended by some NASCAD film student, in the recommendations.
Yeah, it could have been better. But it's fine for what it was. I also watched the 2006 Black Christmas, just because I wanted to see how it was. Have you guys seen it?
Yeah, I think when it came out and probably before I saw the original Black Christmas, which,
I'm also the same. I definitely saw it. That's the first one I saw. I mean, we reviewed it, so I saw it for that also. But it's kind of, that was like high school when that came out. So that was memories.
Memories. And it's got your girl, Lacey Chabert. Christmas Hallmark Queen, and also Michelle Trachtenberg, who I love. She's Buffy's little sister.
Oh, okay.
In Buffy.
I feel like there's a bunch of people in that movie. I can't think of her name, but there's like someone that was really big in the Arrowverse was in that too. That was like the co-star of the Arrow TV show.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
I gotcha. I had to separate the original Black Christmas from this. Had to make them two, different entities because they are. I thought it was like a fun Christmas movie from the 2000s era. And like I said, two queens. But I didn't love like what they did with the story with Billy and the Agnes thing. I don't know. It lost a lot of the charm and like the vulgarity of the original, which just all the things that made the original magical. And
R.I.P. Olivia Hussey.
I was just gonna say, yeah, that's R.I.P. And Ms. Mac. Ms. Mac was horrible in this movie, and there was no Claude the cat, so obviously not nearly as good.
Yeah, a movie without a cat is just not even worth watching. So I agree with you, Jill.
That cat was so funny. I love that cat, actually. I watched A Christmas Story for the first time in my life.
Never seen it.
Of course you haven't seen it, Rowan. Yes, I've seen A Christmas Story.
Okay, of course.
Yeah, that's like a childhood kind of classic where it's also a little bit like edgy at times, I guess, with like the lampshade or like, you're gonna shoot your eye out and getting his tongue stuck to the pole, all that shit. Yeah, that's a good watch.
It really is. I didn't have high expectations just because I was like, this is going to be stupid. And then I watched it and I was like, this embodies Christmas. Like, this is perfect. And the narrator is the guy who narrates the ride, Carousel of Progress in Disney World, which is like one of my favorite rides. So that was nice. But yeah, it's a banger. My favorite part is when that little kid like won't eat his food and his mom is like, be my little piggy or whatever, and he's just like smearing his like mashed potatoes all over his face.
Iconic.
And the last thing I watched besides Nosferatu, which you guys also watched because we did an episode on it last night, it'll be out soon, I watched the first episode of the second season of Squid Game today. And yeah, I'm interested to see where it's going. I couldn't really remember much of what had happened at the end of season 1. So I feel like if you're going into this, maybe rewatch season 1 so you can kind of remember, because it does try to fill in the gaps for you. But I am like, who is this person? Like, who are these people? Blah, blah, blah. So maybe check out the first season. But so far, so good. We'll see how it goes. And the last thing, I'm reading a book called Terror Nova. It's an anthology of Newfoundland-inspired horror. And it's been on my reading list for a while. I'm actually friends with the people who own the publishing company and also one of the writers in here. So far, I'm really loving it. It makes me really homesick, and I just love like Newfoundland folklore. I read a really good story about changelings yesterday in it. So, and other interesting like ghost stories from like shipwrecks and like diving, and it ties like some cool Newfoundland history in there that I actually didn't know about, like from Belle Island, into really good scary stories. And then it has like another story kind of weaving them together, so it's like they're all on this like haunted bus ride and they're just like going to all these different places, and like the person, the host of the haunted bus ride is like telling the stories. And then I don't know, I just really like how it's done. And if you're interested in Newfoundland folklore or just scary stories at all, It's a really nice little read.
Friend of the podcast and also our resident alien predator expert, Big Daddy Brad, I believe, has a story in there.
Yes.
In fact, I believe Brad, if I'm correct, is the editor for that company. So I think he edited the book.
But yeah, that's what I've been up to. Rowan, what have you been doing?
I was wondering what if I was just like, oh, nothing, just hanging out, just
hanging out,
having a good time. I thought, with our movie tonight, I just keep a real mumblecore. No, I've been watching stuff. I said last time that I'm trying to see stuff I've missed, and kind of keep up with new stuff. So I watched The Biggest Heist Ever. I don't think I talked about that last episode. I had watched it, I think after we did the episode, which is like the new Netflix documentary about a Bitcoin scam and heist that's like super wild because it's just this couple with this like white girl, like, I don't know, she's in her 20s, but she was also like an online rapper named Razzle Khan. And like,
you love these types.
She's not good. Like, she's like a joke. She thinks she's serious, but she's like a joke rapper, and people basically just like made fun of her online, and her partner were just like scamming like millions and millions of dollars in Bitcoin, and it was all right, it's just one of those kind of typical Netflix, heist type documentaries, true crime documentaries. We got to get Colton in on the love here. Obviously, I rushed the minute it came out and watched Carry On, and I know Colton also saw this.
Sure did.
Colton, what did you think about Carry On?
Oh, what a banger.
It's a banger.
The reason for the season is Taron Egerton as a TSA agent getting, what's it called? Basically led to do a bunch of things by Jason Bateman in his ear for a good portion of the movie, and then, inexplicably breaking out into just a bunch of action. I thought it was pretty good. I was shocked. I had a good time watching it. It was like just interesting enough to keep me engaged for like the first 50 minutes. And then like the last half of it was just kind of holiday action nonsense that I thought was a lot of fun. So yeah, I mean, I thoroughly enjoyed this. I wasn't expecting the guy who is like fresh off of directing Black Adam to actually make something good. So I was surprised, and I completely understand how it's just like doing numbers on Netflix and how basically everyone has seen this now, and I'm sure we'll get a Carry On 2 or what have you within a couple of years' time for sure.
Carry On even harder. Yeah, it's like super like 90s action thriller.
Yeah.
And, to me, it's like this is exactly Netflix needs to like focus in on this. Like, hour and a half, hour 40 minutes, just like fun action thriller romps. They could do this because this can't cost that much money. And probably the easiest job Jason Bateman's ever taken, because there's no way he was on set for longer than like a half hour.
Yeah, he is barely in the movie. It's just mostly voice work for sure. What do you think of Taron Egerton's American accent? Did it bump for you at all? I thought it was a little bit weird because I picture him from the Kingsman movies or playing Elton John,
Yeah, it was a little weird, but I thought it kind of added to the charm. Just the charm of it all.
Fair enough.
I also checked out Subservience, which is the direct-to-video Megan Fox sci-fi horror film. It's as much horror as Megan is, so I kind of, put it in there as a horror-ish movie. It's Megan. It's basically, what if Megan was Megan Fox and a guy just fucked her? And then she just killed his family. Like, that's basically the plot of the movie.
This was a big hit in my my mom and stepdad's house. They were telling me about Subservience. about how, have you seen Subservience? And then, I open it up and got like a 20%. I said, no, and I probably won't either. I think
I
I'm
also
good.
watched it. It was decent.
Yeah, like to me, I thought I could have wasted time on worse. I mean, I went out, I bought the Blu-ray for $8. This is my kind of jam, though. Like, I love anything that has to do with like AI technology gone wrong, and I thought Megan Fox was pretty good in this. Like, I don't know what that says about her acting, that her just acting as a
better
emotionless robot is her jam. But, I thought it was pretty good. It was fun. To me, it's like not as good as Carry On, but it's like that kind of energy. Just like something you can throw on. It's short. Like, I think it's only like, an hour and 20 minutes, hour 25 minutes. Like,
okay.
It's not a big watch. So then obviously, we had the holidays, so I was trying to knock out some holiday stuff. So I did get a chance to check out A Nonsense Christmas with Sabrina Carpenter.
Yay!
Yeah, it was fine. Not for me. I mean, I don't really know anything about Sabrina Carpenter, nor do I listen to her music. So I know her music, like my kid listens to her and stuff, but not for me. Let's just say this special was not made for me.
It's not, but it was cute. Right.
I heard we have to save the children when it comes to her. She's just far too sexual at her live performances. So I'm a Sabrina Carpenter hater.
She's not for the kids. She's for the girls and the gays.
And then I also watched Wham! Last Christmas Unwrapped, which was far more of a banger than the Sabrina Carpenter special.
But her cover of Last Christmas was really good. Right?
I'll take George Michael's
with
on
Chappell Roan. Okay,
this one. This was pretty good. Obviously, it focuses on the creation of the Last Christmas song, and the music video was kind of cool. They had the entire cast of the music video like reunite and go to the location, which was like this cabin in the woods, and just get drunk, relive the memories of it. The only reason I kind of didn't love it was because this year we also got a Wham documentary that there was a lot of footage they just used from the Wham documentary, because they literally have a whole section talking about this song in the documentary. So they basically just took that 20 minutes and expanded it into an hour and a half or whatever. So, if you've seen the Wham documentary, you probably don't need to see this. I also watched The Merry Gentleman, which is another one of Netflix's Christmas Hallmark movies.
I haven't heard of this one.
This one has, what's his name? People are going to get mad because it's on top of my head. Chad Michael Murray in it.
Oh, that guy.
With some wild hair. Wild hair.
Relevant, what? 18 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Has he been in something since then? I don't know.
So, this one I did not like as much as I liked the Hot Frosty one. This one is about a nightclub that a girl's parents own, and it's in a small town, and no one wants to play there. So this daughter, due to unforeseen circumstances, moves back home and puts on a all-male strip cabaret for the town.
That sounds awesome.
But it's kind of like prostitution, because basically it's just guys she'll see, and she's like, you are now a stripper. And it's she's enlisting people's husbands, her best friend's husband.
Oh, fuck yeah.
All this stuff. And these guys are just, they're like, sure, why not? And they're strippers then. They let some 60-year-old, guy that just hangs out at the bar. You come to find out this guy's also becoming a stripper, and it wasn't very good. It also it's one of those movies 20 minutes we're into the stripping and everything, but they haven't explained how we got there. It just all they're we need to push this along, so we're just gonna skip scenes, and it's we're just there, we're doing it now. So I didn't love it. I'm not even gonna list, but obviously we said we had we have the Mega Now Slaying episode out. We watched a whole shitload of horror movies we didn't review. So just go listen to it. There's a whole big list of them. I did get to see Basic Instinct for the first time.
I actually haven't seen that either.
It is a certified banger. Like, I've always been hesitant because that's never really been my genre. That's like a Mike genre. That's not really like my thing. And so I was just never interested. And I'm just such a Verhoeven fan that like, I was kind of worried. I was like, oh, if I don't like this, it's really going to like taint how I look at him as a director. And then I watched it and the hype is real. The hype is super real. Michael Douglas is amazing in it. Who is it? Sharon Stone? Is that
Sharon Stone?
Yeah, Sharon Stone.
That, iconic scene from it, obviously.
Yeah. And like even the iconic scene like lives up to it's intense. It's awesome. It's even better that Newman from Seinfeld is just in the scene sweating to death. The cast of this is amazing. Just like watch it. It's wild. I absolutely loved it. I did a couple of Christmas rewatches. Rewatched Batman Returns, banger. Four Christmases, another banger in the Fraser household.
I also watched that over.
Yeah, I watch it every year.
For me. Yeah, me too.
I watch it every year. Garfield Christmas, which is like the ultimate banger. I watch that every Christmas day. I did also rewatch Adult Swim Yule Log, and still bangs. In fact, on Letterboxd, it went up a rating for me.
Oh,
like
nice.
I enjoyed it, and I'm like, I'm keeping it in mind. I'm like, how did we've never talked about it? Like, how have we not picked this? This movie is nuts. And I saw there's a second one out that I need to see now.
That's what I was just about to ask. Yeah. Did you check out the second one?
No, I have to see the second one. And then, of course, I watched that, and then I was kind of curious. I was like, I'm interested in other things this guy has made. I know he did, like, Too Many Cooks also.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, I love Too Many Cooks. So I actually watched his first short that he made in film school called Please, Please Pick Up. And it's pretty good. It's not like amazing. He definitely hasn't like honed his skill, but it's interesting. It's like a nerdy, annoying white guy that has a cast on his hand and can't pleasure himself. So he hires a working gal to come pleasure him, but he basically like doesn't shut up the entire time, doesn't let her do her job, and it's just like super annoying. And then there's like a twist at the end. So, it's like you could see this guy was made for Adult Swim, like with this. Yeah. You're like, okay. And then, honestly, like Joel said, we saw Nosferatu. We talked about that Now Slain. I rewatched Y2K again last night. I was watching with Exilia. That's why.
Oh, I was going to say, why would you do that? But
yeah, that's pretty much really all I have been doing. So, Colton, how about you?
Yeah, we've basically touched on everything I've seen. I checked out Azrael, Never Let Go, Apartment 7A, and The Devil's Bath, most importantly, since our last episode. But yeah, we've covered all those on the Now Slaying What We've Missed in 2024 episode, so just check out that for our full thoughts. But The Devil's Bath, banger, for sure.
I was going to say, if anything, just people, The Devil's Bath. It is like on the witch goat level.
Yeah, it's probably my favorite horror thing released this year, I would say. Speaking of which, obviously we checked out Nosferatu 2024, and I also checked out Nosferatu 1922 for the first time, which I thought was actually a lot better than I was expecting. Like, whenever somebody calls something a silent film, you're always like, oh my god, this is going to be like a bore, like an absolute chore to get through. But this one I think is called like a symphony of horror is the subtitle after Nosferatu. So it actually has just like really good music the entire time. A lot of the shots are kind of recreated in Egger's version and then also in, Bram Stoker's Dracula as well. So there was a lot of like familiarity when I was watching it. But I just absolutely enjoyed the first like 40 minutes. And then in typical Dracula fashion, it gets a little bit boring for, 20 minutes or so until we ramp back up again to the ending, which was, great in this rendition as well. So, yeah, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a lot better than I was expecting. And I should probably check out more silent movies overall, because I think I've only seen literally like 2 or 3. I seen like The General, which I thought was excellent as well, and then I thought this was very good. So yeah, I should probably just check out a couple more things from that era, maybe like some Charlie Chaplin stuff. I don't know.
You gotta do what I do, where I message Willow and Trevor, and I'm like, hey, send me a list of old movies you think I should see, and then they send them to me, and I never watch them. But they will put a list together for you, an intense old list, because I know old silent films are like Willow's jam, so...
Nice.
And Trevor.
And then, yeah, the only other thing I've been watching, Jill mentioned already. I checked out Squid Game Season 2, but I've actually seen all of it. I watched the first 2 episodes on, I think it was like the 27th, and then I just sat around all day yesterday watching the rest of it. Or, I mean, all afternoon. There's not a lot to watch here, folks. Like, it's only 7 episodes, which is kind of crazy, considering it probably takes 2 episodes before they even get into the games at all. And then, they do the usual Squid Game thing where they end episodes mid-game and, on cliffhangers and stuff. All in all, I'd say it's a lot weaker than Season 1. What I'll say is I think all the characters in the games are, like, caricatures. Like, they're not even just like archetypes. It's like literally you'll have like a woman who's a shaman who's communing with the dead spirits there, or you'll have a guy who's a villain that calls himself Thanos and he has his hair dyed purple and his fingernails painted like the Infinity Stones.
I can't wait.
Or you'll have a Bitcoin scammer who did a rug pull and basically like bankrupted 2 or 3 of the other contestants, including himself. And it's just like, sure, these may not be characters we've actually seen before, but they're also not characters you really want to follow either. And then, kind of like some of the more dramatic beats of the season without spoiling them. They're obviously things you've seen before, because if you've seen Squid Game 1, you've seen every permutation of how people can relate to the main character and then get killed off considering he is the sole survivor. So anyways, any of like the tension is kind of stripped away. All I was kind of watching for was one plot line that is not in Season 1 that is a little bit more interesting. And honestly, that didn't really even deliver either, because the creator, from what I understand, he wanted this just to be one more season and the entire show be finished. But in the writing process, it wound up being like 10 or 11 longer episodes. So Netflix was just like, well, why don't we break it up into 2 seasons? So Season 2 basically has no overarching structure. It doesn't have a satisfying ending. It might be good when you watch it in conjunction with Season 3, but as of right now, it's kind of like, I don't know. It feels like it's ending on like episode 5 of like Squid Game Season 1 to me. So yeah,
it's a bummer.
I wouldn't really highly recommend it at this point in time. It's still fun at times, with that regular Squid Game charm and watching, them play these kind of like devilish children's games. But outside of that, it's not a banger. Certainly, I can understand why it's not kind of catching on as much as the first season did. But yeah, I mean, that's basically all I've been watching.
Well, with that, let's, get on into the main event. Colton, this was your pick, so why don't you introduce us to it and let us know why you chose it?
Yeah, so I decided to choose Lake Mungo. This one's been on my list for quite a while, as I mentioned, and essentially it was just, I thought it was kind of time to maybe pick it. It was something different than kind of like the effects-driven, over-the-top kind of fantastical story of Krampus that we covered on the last episode. And I was like, you know what? It has been a while since we've done like a mockumentary, found footage sort of film. And this is one, if you ever search up, great mockumentary horror movies, Lake Mungo's going to be there. It's one that I think when I was Googling, no one on the show had it logged, like yourself or Jill or Mike. So I was like, okay, it's going to be like a fresh conversation. And it's also one that has kind of garnered a cult following since its release, despite being like an absolute box office disaster. So yeah, it was sort of thing where, I just wanted a reason to kind of rewatch it and kind of, evaluate it on the show.
Well, with that, let's get into the trailer, and we'll be back with the synopsis and first experiences.
The following is based on true events.
Can you interpret dreams?
Sometimes. How do you feel when you wake up from these dreams?
They scare me a bit.
For Alice Palmer, underneath the hopes of a bright future were suspicions
I feel like something bad is going to happen to me.
that death was near.
You scared of dying?
Yeah, of course I'm scared of dying.
That was the last time that I saw her. I kept hearing noises in the hallway.
It hasn't reached me yet, but it's on its way. I feel like I can't do anything.
I think Ellie saw a ghost. I didn't have any rational explanation for who was in those photos.
Something was happening inside that house, and I wanted to find out what it was.
There was a ghost in our house.
Lake Mungo.
Yeah, of course I'm scared of dying. Isn't everyone scared of dying?
Lake Mungo was written and directed by Joel Anderson, and the story is as follows. After 16-year-old Alice Palmer drowns at a nearby lake, her grieving family experiences a series of strange, inexplicable events around their home. In an effort to record such phenomena, Alice's older brother Matthew sets up a series of video cameras capturing evidence that Alex's ghost may be visiting them and leading them to uncover her secret past.
So, our first experience, is this our first time seeing it? Or are we just found footage nuts and, we want to log as many as we can in? You're like Colton. You like, you like this lower form of cinema.
Oh, what the fuck?
I kid. I mean, Colton, you picked it. Is this your first time seeing it?
No, it's not my first time seeing it, but it's not something I've seen many times either. It's just been kind of like this found footage movie, like operating around like the peripheral vision of like me searching out these films all the time. I saw it there probably 7 or 8 years ago on Discord, just watching it online with a couple of friends one evening, and we all thought it was quite great. So it was the sort of thing where I haven't watched it since, but being a big found footage, horror fan myself, it's something I'm familiar with, but I've only seen one time other than, this afternoon. What about you, Jill?
Yeah, this is my first time. I had seen this movie because we were kind of discussing how this is featured everywhere in the US on different streaming services and platforms, but it's harder to find in Canada.
Yeah.
So I've seen it around, but I had no idea what the premise was. And we've done so many like lake movies, I feel, Lake Placid, Eden Lake. So, and both very different.
It's the end of the
movies.
Lake trilogy for 2024. Yeah.
Colton's Lake trilogy.
Absolutely.
Yep. So I had no idea what to expect. Didn't know it was found footage, except for what you said on the episode last time. And also, I had no idea, the paranormal sort of ghosty situation going on here. So definitely was a nice surprise to find out that there were no alligators and crocodiles and such.
That we know of.
That we
knows
know
what
of.
was in the lake?
That
What
we
was in
know
the
of.
lake? We don't know for sure. It
Crocodiles.
does take place in Australia. You never know. Anyways, Rowan, is it your first time checking this out?
I mean, just wait, Jill. Just wait for the quadrilogy when someone picks Lake Placid too, and the lake continues. This is my first time seeing this. It was kind of on my radar, so I remember. I don't think it was that long ago. I believe this was on Shudder in Canada, because I remember maybe turning it on. I fell asleep or something really early, couple minutes into it. But this is one of those movies I've seen on a lot of lists. I've said throughout the, almost 6 years of this podcast, like, I'm kind of a big fan of, like, mumblecore horror, and this is always kind of listed on mumblecore lists, and I've also seen it on, like, found footage lists of, like, really great movies, so I've always had an interest in it, but I've never actually sat down and watched it, so this is my first time fully watching this.
Yeah, like up until like literally like probably 2 or 3 years ago, this was incredibly hard to find. Like there was like a print that I think like Second Sight Films is what I'm seeing here. They like remastered it in 4K. And then I think that was kind of the print that kind of got passed around. But like back, 5-6 years ago, I think this was like basically only available, if you knew where to look, essentially, if you were going to pirate it, essentially, you couldn't find this anywhere else, I don't think. Now, as Jill said, it's on a bunch of different streaming services, but I mean, it's been so criminally underseen just because it's been so damn hard to find as well.
Well, with that, let's get into the review. Let's open up the case files and figure out whether this film's gonna, sink or swim. So, yeah, let's talk about Lake Mungo, people.
Before talking explicitly about Lake Mungo, I just want to know, have you guys been fooled by mockumentaries before? We may have discussed this when we, covered The Medium last year, but like for me, when I was growing up, like I think like movies such as like The Blair Witch Project or The Fourth Kind, which is a way worse movie than The Blair Witch Project. But like when I was growing up, I didn't really understand the difference between like a mockumentary and a documentary, or if it was just a straight up horror movie or what we were watching. So I remember being fooled by The Fourth Kind in particular, where that has like Mila Jovovich in it and like actual actors. It's like alien abductions in Alaska. And I remember at the time there was a scene near the end where like someone gets like tractor beamed out of their bed, like they like levitate. And I remember being like scared shitless and like, I don't know, grade 8 when I was watching it. And I was like, oh my God, this is real footage. Like aliens exist, just like reality crumbling around me. I'm just wondering if like the mockumentary genre has been something that I've been pretty familiar with for years and years and years. I'm just wondering, like, have you guys been fooled or any, memories of it?
Yeah, for me, like you just kind of mentioned, it was the Blair Witch Project because there was so much hype around it when we were growing up. And I just remember like seeing, it's based on a true story. And there was just like so much like, I don't know, kind of lore around it. And it was like a rite of passage. I remember downloading it and watching it on my family computer in like grade 8, probably like you just said. And I also like didn't realize that it's not real until afterwards, after I'd watched it. So yeah, it's definitely like a really funny experience to look back on when you're so young and you just like don't comprehend things like that.
Yeah. So you're just fooled by so many movies like in video stores that are like based on true events or inspired by a true story. And you bring home this horror movie and it's just like the most horrific shit you've ever seen. And you're just like, how on earth can this be true? And it's just like, well, it's inspired by a true event of, a knocking against someone's house or something, it's, and they spun all this out of just this tall tale.
I'm trying to think like, cause I remember seeing the Blair Witch Project, like with my parents at the theater. And like, I remember the confusion about, like, is this based on something real? But I never like was like, oh, this is real footage. I think probably the closest thing I have is like, I remember seeing Faces of Death for the first time. And, like those were always marketed as like, it's a compilation of like beheadings and all this stuff. And rightfully so, like in that series, they used like news footage of real beheadings and stuff like that. But of course, it came out years and years later that a lot of the stuff was just stage stuff.
Yeah.
Fake executions. But at the time, like, those were, I had to go to some grimy mom and pop video stores, to find Faces of Death to rent. And when I did, I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I was like, for sure, we got our hands on some snuff here, boys. Let's get her going.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, that's probably the closest I've ever been to like being tricked, I think.
Well, I just wanted to ask, just because like if you're familiar at all with the mockumentary style, then you should probably realize that this is a very well done mockumentary in terms of selling the idea that it's a real event that happened. Like, just rewatching this afternoon, I just thought it was so well done, like the mixture of police footage and newsreels and all these talking head interviews, where I thought all of the people that they cast for these interviews and to play these roles, they just completely sold it. I didn't really find like a false note in the whole group. And that's the thing when you do these, like, you know, if there's a performance that feels too showy, it just kind of like pulls you out of it instantly. Something like probably Mila Jovovich in like The Fourth Kind, if I went and watched it now. But all these people, like, you know, they were just probably like up and coming fledgling actors just kind of getting their break in a movie. And I thought a lot of them like absolutely killed it.
Yeah. I agree, and especially from the time this is from, it is very much like hits every note of the documentaries of that time. Like they all kind of looked and sounded like that. So one of the high points of the movie for me is that it was extremely realistic, and they don't go over the top with like the evidence that they have. Like it's very they restrict themselves, and it pays off in that aspect because it does seem very real. And just the you're just talking about like the actors. My favorite was the group of three girls.
Oh yeah,
they really
only
sold
in there
it
for a moment, but yeah.
They're so good.
I was gonna say, and you know, like the intention of Joel Anderson in this, like, it's just kind of brilliant. Like, even, you know, obviously I was trying to look up about it. Obviously like everyone else, like, I read the Wikipedia page and I saw that, like, he made a comment that they purposefully tried to make it this way so that, you know, his hope was it would be an oddity. And like his exact quote was, I think we were thinking it'd be nice if we could make a film that was kind of a curiosity, but if you saw it years from now, you wouldn't know anything about where it came from. You'd be wondering, is it real? Is it not real? And I had thought about one of the, I can't remember where I read it, maybe Rotten Tomatoes or some critic. It might have been Variety when they reviewed it, but basically talking about how, like, if you walked in the middle of someone watching this, you could very well believe you were watching like 60 Minutes or like some sort of news documentary. And, you know, it's funny, as you talked about being tricked by these mockumentaries. Like, my first note was, I just love how real this feels. And then probably what's sad about my notes is that I was like, you know, kind of like those Netflix true crime documentaries.
Yeah.
And then I thought about it. I'm like, are we now in a time where I can't remember like documentaries before Netflix and everything?
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah. For me, like, you know, the documentary that they're kind of like parodying or, you know, emulating is probably the better term for it. Like, in this movie is definitely something that just like Netflix does all the time now, where it's like it builds up the family and the tragedy. You don't know if they're going to return or not. Oh my God, they do return, but then they kind of like start pointing the blame at different things that have happened. They keep crucial information and reintroduce it later, such as like, oh, the psychic talking to the daughter and the mother. Stuff like that is like very much like how you'd end an episode on one of these Netflix shows, where it's like, well, you might not have known, but, you know, the psychic knew more than they were letting on, you know, and, you know, show a little piece of him talking to Alice, you know, that sort of thing. When I was watching it, it was just like, oh, it's Joel Anderson wholly understands this, like, you know, this hour. No, it's not this hour has 22 minutes, 60 minutes. It's just, right? It's just the documentary style. But he completely understands it, like, so much so that it just, he can absolutely like fool you when you're watching it, that you're, you know, watching a real one of those.
Oh my God, Dateline. That's what I was thinking of.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's just like, especially for these, like, it's very rare, and this is why I've never been a big found footage person. Like, I think, and it might sound like pretentious, and I feel like that's why found footage people get knocked up, but I always find, I'm like, oh, this is just like a lazy way to make a horror movie. It's a cheap way, obviously, that you can like make a horror movie, but to me, it's just like, the filmmaking of this is actually so impressive. Like, the different kinds of like stocks of film they use. It's never showy, and it's never like, I'm gonna make sure you know this is a horror movie, which actually makes it hit harder, I think. It gives it more of like, not like terror as in like I'm watching, you know, some scary movie, but it's just like this like feeling of impending, just like
dread.
Yeah. Like you are like we said, like you are watching like something that actually happened.
Yeah.
And I could find myself like falling in that hole, because I'll be honest, like this is going and like maybe like 20 minutes into it, like I'm interested in the story, but I'm kind of like, oh yeah, like I might end up on my phone halfway through this.
Yeah, like where's the horror is probably like what you're asking, like 20 minutes in, right? Where we're still building up all the different family members and all this shit, right?
And I'm not gonna lie, there was points where I'm like, I'm even trying, I'm like, let me just go on my phone, I can hear what they're saying, and like as it keeps going, even me just hearing the stuff and half paying attention, like I had to put my phone away because I'm just like, Jesus, like it just, you know, it just gets so like depressing and bleak. And like this is my kind. This would be my kind of documentary. Like, and the story's just like so true in actual life. I mean, obviously, other than all the ghost stuff, but like we get all these twists in it and stuff like that where I'm just like, Jesus, like, you know. This apparition is like the least terrifying thing in this whole movie.
Yeah.
I was going through like kind of the same thing. I was like, I'm getting a little bored, picking up my phone, started vacuuming. When it was just like the, you know, the spooky kind of ghost thing. But when they introduced kind of like the twist where she had that safe with the tape in it and she found like the neighbor in there in that picture, that's when I like really became interested, because it wasn't just this, oh, okay, we lost her and she's haunting us. I think that would have been really boring. But it really reminded me of Twin Peaks, like Laura Palmer kind of, which is funny because the Palmer name is in there. But like the whole time they're trying to figure out what happened to their daughter, but then they find this like secret life, which is like very Laura Palmer. And I thought that whole storyline was very interesting. And then also like when they're like, oh yeah, she knew something bad was coming to her, and you can see like the footage of her like, you know, acting kind of frantic and stuff. And I like the direction that went into after that. And totally like saved the movie for me.
Well, I think the movie like intentionally like does like an anticlimax like 40 minutes in, where it's just basically like, okay, we've been building up these scares of like, you know, her face in the vase at the end of the hallway, or, you know, the backyard shot where she's kind of center frame beneath the tree and all this sort of thing, where obviously when they first show that footage, I would say most people don't understand that, or don't see that there's anything wrong with it. You know, we're only seeing it for a couple of seconds on screen. But when they go back and kind of show, when they review the footage, or, you know, Matthew in the movie reviews it and kind of points these things out, I thought it was like quite chilling. I thought it was a good use of like implementing like a ghost, because the thing that I find interesting about like, you know, revealing a ghost in this method is the fact that they've already like pulled the wool over your eyes one time and you didn't see it until you're looking closer, which is like even the tagline of the movie, right? It's like, oh, if you've never seen a ghost, look closer, right? So I like that in here, that basically they build up the horror of the ghost. You kind of see it a couple of different times, and then they basically pull everything out from underneath it, where they're like, oh, actually, it was just Matthew, you know, doing this kind of to help basically in this weird like backwards way to exhume the body, to make 100% sure that it was his sister that was dead. And then it's also like a way that it prolonged the grief for his mother. That is like a terrible thing that happened. And then basically the movie is kind of like just in this like stasis period where it's like, it's not really scary at this point anymore. And then it takes, you know, another 20 minutes before it builds up to like another like actual scare in a horror way. Like obviously you get the element of the secret life and the tape with the neighbors and, you know, how distressing that is. whether it's consensual or not, given how, old she is and whatnot. But the movie like intentionally does that. It like almost undercuts itself to a certain degree, because if you would have just let the tension keep building and building and building, it's just like, okay, like you're gonna expect like all these ghosts and scares and stuff to just keep ratcheting up. Instead, the movie's like, no, it was the brother. This is nonsense essentially, until we finally get like a real ghost, quote unquote, near the end of the movie.
Yeah, well, and I thought like the stuff with the double life was like so well done, because I was like, in a filmmaker that maybe like a little more. A filmmaker that maybe is looking for something a little more cheap, a little more exploitation, where like I was like, this double life would really be played up as like, she's sleeping with the neighbors, she's sleeping with all these people or whatever. But like I had written down, like when it got to that part, I was like, my heart dropped for it, just because, like you said, Colton, like they never, even though they keep talking about, this like other life, this secret life, no one ever actually implies that there is like full consent in it. Even the video and the clip they show is like, to me, was like very questionable, because you couldn't really tell, like, were those like moans of pleasure? They also like sounded like someone that may not necessarily want to do that. And they never actually they never say like she took the video. Like we're assuming the couple took the video. So, I was like, she's obviously got the video to be like, if you say like, if this happens again or whatever, like I've got proof here. But yeah, to me, that's where, and I talk about this when we talk about horror movies in general, like to me, the scary stuff for me is always like real stuff. Like that's why I like home invasion stuff. And this is, I'm like, I was like, Jesus Christ, like these neighbors are going to be like, child raping psychopaths. And we got Creepy Buddy in the background.
So creepy.
Yeah.
And they zoom in on his face. I was like, shit.
Yeah, well, that's, I think, when the movie is like the most effective at its horror, is just like, once again, the credits kind of does this to great effect near the end of the movie, where it shows you all these ghosts that you missed throughout the movie, right? That they were like in there in the background a lot of the time.
I'm glad I didn't see that.
Yeah, see,
which is very effective. It's good. It reminds me of. It reminds you of like kind of like the Haunting of Hill House Netflix articles when that came out. It was like, the 20 hidden ghosts.
Which isn't surprising. I saw on Letterboxd, this is one of Mike Flanagan's like favorite movies. He like wrote a big review about this, has it hearted, and says this is like one. He says he shows this to people all the time when he wants to show them like a really good found footage movie.
Nice. The one thing, just going back to the neighbors before we move on from it, is like I like that narrative isn't wrapped up neatly, because once again, having everything wrapped up perfectly, they come back into life and they get charged with things, then go to jail and all that stuff. It's like a way a movie would do it. It's very rare you watch a movie where it's like, they bring up this plot line and then it's just left hanging and there's never any closure with it. Where this one is just essentially like they just go to the detective and they're like, we thought we had some leads, we thought it was going somewhere, but basically, the trail just went cold. And I like that as just like a detail that makes it feel even more believable. Yeah. Of course, maybe it's a screenwriting thing where he just didn't know where to take this or just wanted to drop it. But it was the sort of thing where it adds an extra level of like authenticity to me, because when you watch these cold case documentaries, not everything is 100% neatly figured out. There might be a load of different theories that you're following, but it's a cold case for a reason.
It's way more realistic, definitely.
Yeah, and I thought, you brought up just like, obviously, I mean, it was a Colton pick, so we knew this was going to be about grief.
It was funny watching this, Rowan. I was like, okay, it's about grief.
Good grief.
Not exactly trauma, but grief. And when I was thinking about it, I was just like, it was accidental on my part. But when you Google it now, if you search up like, horror movies about grief, or like, grief through horror, this is like always there now. This is like one of the, the top 5 that'll be mentioned.
And
in more recent years. Yeah, in more recent years, they'll point out like The Babadook and Hereditary and, whatever. But it was like, this is a a very good grief in horror movie. And I think that they really let you feel the loss of this character for like 20 minutes before they even get into the horror, where I'm saying like this might even lose people before they get to anything horrific other than just, a drowned girl, a missing girl. That I thought was really effective. I loved kind of like the father's approach, like talking about how basically he just got lost in his work and ignored it. I liked how the mother, you could kind of see in her talking head interview, she was still like, I don't know, it felt like it was still raw to her a lot of the time when she was talking about it. The brother, who seemed like he hasn't slept in a while, that like most viewers would probably be like, oh, he had something to do with it when you're starting it off. And it's like, oh no, he's having something to do with it now, manipulating these photographs and shit.
He was giving off that John Benet brother.
I was just going to say that. Burke.
Yeah, Burke.
But yeah, I thought this was like a really good, exploring grief through horror, especially even like how it all culminates in the idea of like, the ghost story being wrapped up. It's no longer haunting them. But when they leave, they're still, she's still there, or that idea is still there. They may not see the ghost, but it might be always with them or always following them, or it's always in the background. I liked how there's that idea of like grief can sneak up on you when you least expect it, sort of thing.
Yeah, it's just like it's a really masterful way to deal with loss and grief. And I thought it was also interesting because, to me, I actually, it was funny because you said, oh, not necessarily trauma, but I had trauma written down from Alice's perspective. Like, we are dealing with some sort of trauma that Alice has felt, but also a grief that you do sometimes, but not often in horror, where, we also get to kind of get this feeling of Alice grieving for herself because she knows what's going to happen. And it's just like an interesting look at a character that, knows inevitably what's going to happen at the end. They have this feeling, and that's just like such a unique kind of grief that you don't necessarily see portrayed in film often. And it's just, it's so well done in this.
That was the saddest part for me, like the most tragic and kind of like, I don't know, dreadful part of it is like she knows something bad is going to happen, and there's nothing to do about it.
Yeah, I think that's tragic as well, like near the end of the movie, where it's kind of revealed that after, the incident at Lake Mungo, how, she didn't ever really feel the same afterwards, how she went to the, the psychiatrist and, told a very spooky story, similar to like her mom, like this dream essentially of her mother ignoring her and not knowing that her presence was there, which is, exactly what happens in the movie. And the mother says the same thing from the other point of view. That I thought was really interesting, but also just like this idea of like, you just can't escape it. I guess that's for all of us. Eventually it's going to happen, right? There's impending dread and impending death for all of us. So it's just a matter of like when it's going to happen. Knowing to a certain degree that it feels imminent or more imminent than it does for most of us is, it was sad. A lot of this movie, when I was watching it, I was like, damn, this is just a more sad, like a far sadder movie than I remember as well. Because in my head, watching it on Discord, it was essentially like that movie was very scary is my memory of it. And like, I remember there were all these hidden ghosts in it. That's basically what I remember. I forgot like how much of like this family unit, the deterioration, kind of like them searching out for her, and then, thankfully them actually all staying together at the end of it, because it's not very often like you'll have like the death of a child in a horror movie and the family unit manages to, stay together and persevere through the end of it. So I thought it was really strong in that way as well.
Yeah, and I guess kind of going off that topic, I do want to say I really noticed, and it's very subtle in this film, but very effective, I thought this had a really good score. I thought the music was really good in it.
It's subtle, but it knows when it needs to hit, for sure. And, kind of like that deep bass droning that like something like, I know you don't like Paranormal Activity, but they use it as well and used it, 1 year before this. But like kind of like the idea of like slowly zooming in on something horrific. And it's just, the dread is mounting, the bass is mounting, and it's, so good. But Jill is she's like laughing her head off.
Oh, because it got me, dude. Because there were at points where it got like kind of staticky, and I was like, is that me? Or is this the movie? And I would have to like stop, and it kept doing it. Yeah.
No, it's really effective.
Like, I really like what the score did towards the end of it also. And even the song in the credits, like, I mean, honestly, I was like, it's kind of giving me We're All Going to the World's Fair vibes.
Yeah.
I was like, I would not be surprised if Anderson didn't have like similar musical tastes in music. But yeah, I just thought it was really effective and worked. I mean, it pulled at my emotions when it needed to pull at my emotions, which is what an effective score does. So
and it's also what like an effective ghost story should do as well. Like you should feel like a little bit like down by the end of like a ghost story, because the whole thing is like obviously, you know, putting to rest what they couldn't before they passed away, you know, whether it's, you know, uncovering a wrongdoing to them or exposing something that, you know, they just it has to come to light, destroying a cursed object involved in like killing them. There's always this idea of like this relentless spirit. And, you know, oftentimes there's, you know, other issues to consult in order to lay it to rest, right? That are oftentimes very tragic, which is the sort of thing where I feel like we don't get enough good ghost stories anymore. Like, I can't even really think of ghost stories within the last couple of years that have, like, hit hard or have been, like, a big movie. And maybe it is just because they're a little bit more dour or a downer. But it's just, I don't know. When I was watching this, I was like, damn, we need more ghost stories, like, good ghost stories. Maybe I just need to go back further in, like, you know, film history to find some. Just to kind of satiate me. But yeah, I really enjoyed this one.
I was going to say, this is a conversation I can have with Colton, because, you know, some people don't watch the end credits or anything like that, and
oh my god,
just immediately shut things off. But I did want to say, like, and we brought it up briefly there, like, I just really enjoyed, like you said, I wanted to bring it up again, like, them showing what I missed, because you know, as we see a lot of the same pictures throughout this. And I am, when I'm looking at them, I'm like, okay, like, you know, I've got my ghost hunter cap on, and I
call it a wandering eye movie. They reveal something that you missed, and then for the rest of the movie you're on edge, kind of like scanning the screen whenever they're showing those, be like, okay, what else is here that I'm not seeing? And so many times it would take me 3 or 4 seconds of zooming in before I saw exactly what he wanted you to see. It is really like masterful at hiding things in plain sight, for sure.
Yeah, because I was questioning myself at the end. I'm like, did he just put these in the picture and I didn't actually miss them? Or, you know, I was like, what's going on here? And, I mean, obviously I wouldn't know until I saw it a second time. But yeah, I like that ending. I think that's kind
I think
of an
most of
ingenious...
them are. Yeah, I think most of them are actually there. The one that I'm a little bit more iffy on is how prominent her ghost is in the background of the family photo, where it's like, you know, the three of them together and then like the window. I think when they first show it, I feel like her face in the window might be blurred out a little bit more than it is at the end. I feel like that might be the only one he's being a little bit disingenuous with. The rest, like, you know, let's say the woman standing beneath the tree and then the little girl sat on the bench to the far right in the frame. She's right there, right from the beginning, whether or not you see her or not. Or like the guy's face in the other room, like the neighbor, he's there right from the beginning as well. Because I noticed him this time. Because I knew there was some of the footage where it was like they reveal one thing and you go back to it and they reveal another thing. So I was even more on edge when I was watching it. But yeah, it's really well done.
Yeah, and you know, another note I had was just like the cast in general of this. Like, I thought everybody kind of played their role good. Like, I thought it was interesting. Like, you know, you brought up the dad and the mom and that, but just like the ancillary characters, you know, I thought they just didn't overdo it, which you could kind of do. And, you know, even like the psychic medium guy, you know, that's a role that could really be hammed up. And I just liked how straight he played it, like how it wasn't a big deal that I'm like this medium.
I like that the mystery didn't hinge on him kind of like exposing a demon or exposing something as well. It was more like his purpose in the movie was more so trying to give the family some peace, you know, and then eventually, you know, tying in how, Alice also knew something was coming for her in her final days. But it was the sort of thing where a lot of these movies, or a lesser movie, you'd have to bring in the demonologist to go to Lake Mungo with you and consort with the spirits, or you'd have to go talk to the native people living there to be like, oh, actually, this is a burial ground where, thousands of cursed spirits have been buried, or something like
Stephen King.
You would need something to explain this more, where in this it's like, oh no, it was just like she would go there, in the summer camp essentially, and obviously as kids often do at summer camp, just get up to no good.
The medium would show up with like a big platinum cross on, like a cape and stuff, and
yeah,
it would be like David Dismelchian or something doing like some ridiculous voice.
To be fair, he's like excellent in most things.
I loved him.
Yeah, but I don't want him in Lake Mungo. I want him rolling up in the third act, How did we all feel about the Lake Mungo sequence in this? Because for me, when I was rewatching this, I remembered there was part of the mystery hinged on some sort of video she recorded on her phone. I remembered that. Like when they mentioned that she lost her phone, I remember that was a key detail. But I also didn't realize that we were going to like kind of like a national park or a place like that known as Lake Mungo. I thought it was like the lake she drowned in was Lake Mungo when I was going into this. So I was like, oh yeah, the third act of this really hinges on like the family going to Lake Mungo, kind of retracing her last steps and finding this, where she buried her phone and bracelet and what have you in there. I thought it was really well done. It was a good horror thing, of course, choosing to go at night, but also like when they're reviewing the footage, I think you get like the only true jump scare, I think, in the whole movie. And they let you like kind of like live with it for a moment because, it's the idea of like seeing this figure in the dark and it's like coming towards the camera, and then the artifacting, and it kind of glitches a little bit and goes a little bit faster, but then the music cue and how hard it like slams the screen after like an hour and probably 10 minutes of buildup of not having that sort of horror. I just thought it was a pretty effective culmination to that, like that whole sequence.
I did as well, and that jump scare definitely got me. Yeah. And yeah, I like that whole thing with her, bearing all of her belongings. It also reminded me of Twin Peaks again. And I don't know.
So,
I like that.
Yeah, I know the Laura Palmer relation, obviously, from what I've seen of Twin Peaks, which is one episode, and it was more than enough for me. I got that relation, and I know she like drowns as well. But yeah, I'm sorry, guys. I hate Twin Peaks from what I've seen.
Oh my
okay,
God.
shut it off. Shut it off.
Yeah,
we're done here.
Stop recording.
Not for me.
Oh
Willow will never ever come on the podcast again. I know that. I think
she'll come on. It'll just be strategically timed when I'm nowhere near it.
This is just more fuel for her fire against you.
Listen, loads of people that I respect and I have like similar opinions on most films with love Twin Peaks for whatever reason. I've watched the pilot 2 or 3 times, and it's just, it never grabs me enough to go to episode 2. So.
I'll tell you, to me, this footage, what was the most terrifying is I was just remembering having a cell phone then and how terrible the footage is. Yeah. And I was like, man, that is scary that we were looking at videos we made on our like Virgin prepaid flip phones that you bought at Zeller's, and you're like, this is it. It will never get better than this. Yeah, it's only downhill from here.
2 pixels.
But,
but also like the 2 pixels, for example, or looking like shit. Most filmmakers wouldn't just put it out looking like shit.
No.
Joel Anderson, like he has this fascination with the technology of the time and wanting to present it as a matter of fact and the way it would look like, if this was made nowadays, sure, we might have this grainy cell phone footage, but you better believe when it becomes to the jump scare, they're putting in some CGI visual effects sort of thing to like kind of like, it would look completely out of sorts. And that's the thing with most of like the photographs and the video footages that's edited or manipulated as well. Like it looks pretty seamless most of the time, like what they're doing to sell the effect of the ghost. Yeah. Like there wasn't like a moment that it was super obviously superimposed in like the frame for me.
And this is where, to me, found footage works for me really well. And, Colton's going to groan. Colton's going to do all this. But I'm going somewhere with this. The fact is, let me bring up when you and me reviewed The Outwaters, another found footage film, but...
We're not allowed to mention that movie on the show anymore, Rowan. Come on.
But, like I said, to me, the most effective part of that movie is when you can't really see shit. You can hear, kinda. It's like, it's blurry sound. Like, this is what works because... Yeah, to me, it's like then we're really using our imagination in this. And like you said, even though we get this character or, this apparition, this ghost, like the rest of that footage, I'm like, oh, like what's going on? Like, they're walking, they're running. We do get that kind of still shot where they're like, obviously you see that she saw something, she's upset, and but you can't really know. Same with her burying the stuff. Like, I was like, even those images work so well because they're so pixelated.
Oh, it's so bad. Like the footage of where it's like, oh, and you might not even notice, but in the bottom left corner, there's a light and you see someone vaguely moving and they are literally like 6 pixels, It's like, okay, in motion, I guess you can see someone's there burying something,
I can't wait till we finally launch on video, and that's what we give people is, the 6
pixels.
Yeah, 6 pixels video. Lots of like bad loading. It loads down like when you're like loading porn up on the old dial up. Did you guys have any other notes about this, or are you good to go in the rating it?
Honestly, I think we've kind of hit everything. Like for a movie, it is short. It's only like what, like I think like 87 minutes or something.
It's not very long.
And a lot of it is just luring you into that mockumentary vibe. And you watching the few horrors that play out. It's, unless you're talking about themes like Jill likes to get into, if we're going to be talking about grief and all that sort of thing, there's not a whole lot more to discuss here. And we've already kind of touched on those things. So, yeah, I mean, I'm ready to rate it.
Well, I did just read a Changeling short story, and I was thinking about the entity that came after her because it looked like her, right? I immediately thought, okay, this is like a changeling sort of thing, but nah. Carry on.
I like the explanation that the movie gives where it's like, I believe she recorded a ghost. I believe she recorded the future coming to get her, that her brother says. And he says it with such conviction that I'm like, yeah,
I believe that too.
That's the explanation.
Yeah. And I like that explanation. It's refreshing.
Yeah, it's interesting for sure.
If that's all, let's land the plane on this one. So if you're new to the podcast, our rating system is nay, okay, yay, or slay. Jill, what would you give 2008's Lake Mungo?
Okay. So yeah, I was very bored in the first part of this movie, and then I became more engrossed in it, and it was decent. I liked it. But I probably wouldn't watch it too much again. Like, I might rewatch it to see all these ghosts, and I might not, because one of the things I don't fucks with is ghosts, because I will actually not sleep at night. And I couldn't sleep after watching Hereditary, and I just know watching this and seeing the end credit scene and then going back and seeing all of the ghosts in the different scenes, it would make me so paranoid. So I don't really do ghost movies, so it's not really like my cup of tea, but I appreciate it for what it is. I get why people really like it and has this cult following, but yeah, it's an okay for me. Colton, this is your pick. What are we rating it?
All the garbage she has slayed on the podcast.
That is not...
an okay to Lake Mungo is sacrilegious.
Sorry.
Although, I mean, I'm not going to slay it either. I think the movie is very good to great. I think in terms of found footage, this is definitely one of the better found footage movies, especially like in the mockumentary style, just not, discovering tapes or whatnot. Yeah, I thought it was effectively sad in the beginning. Then it was creepy. I liked seeing, the faces and all the footage, the subversion of like revealing that as the brother, leading into kind of like that third act where we get an actual, likely a ghost, or at least, a version of her from when she was dead. I thought was really effective. And yeah, I love the ending of the final shot, the footage or the picture that we're reviewing with all the footage of the few different ghosts and stuff we've missed along the way. Yeah, I think it's really effective. I wish Joel Anderson would make another movie. I wish she'd be involved in the film world. I
saw
know,
he was the script editor there.
Yeah, on what's it called, Late Night with the Devil. But like, he literally has been out of the industry for like 15 years after this movie. So I don't know. Maybe it was just a really personal thing. The movie's also dedicated to his late father at the end of it. So maybe he was dealing with grief as he was making it. But yeah, I think it's a really effective horror movie. Definitely among the best of found footage mockumentary style. So I'm going to give it a very strong yay. It's just, for me to get to a sleigh, there has to be, most of the time, some sort of more of like an emotional attachment for me, where, this is just a very great movie. What about you, Rowan?
Jesus. Yeah. So let's just put it up front. I'm going to slay it. I really liked it. I
love it.
Yeah, I can't believe this. That means I've slayed you pick, and I slayed a Jill pick last time. And now it's just a Mike pick I gotta slay, I guess.
Good luck.
Oh, that's basically impossible. So.
But yeah, like I said, I really enjoyed this, and I enjoyed it even more, even though I gave the whole story about like, I was like picking up my phone, and like that actually made me enjoy it way more, because I'm like, holy shit, this actually has me. This has like gripped my attention. And like I said, this is a mumblecore horror mockumentary, and that is my jam. Like I am a sucker for that. I really liked this. I liked how subtle everything was, and kind of like Jill was saying, it's kind of interesting because do I think, every month I'm going to be like, it's time to put like Mungo on? No. But this is one that I can definitely see showing people that have never seen it, and even people that aren't really into horror movies. This would be something I could show them that I think people could actually really enjoy. So yeah, I'm going to give it a slay. So a slay, a yay, and an okay. We're all over the place here.
Yeah, one of them is very wrong, but that's all
right. So with that, we told you what we thought, and we asked you what you thought, and we did. I was like, has anyone ever heard of this movie? And people did write in. So Horror Hound Holly P wrote in. I'll give her credit. She wrote in on Instagram and Threads, the same thing, but wrote it on both. Although I was kind of curious. I was like, I wonder if it shows up on Threads now. I don't know what Threads is doing, really. But she wrote in and said, one of my favorites, simple, haunting, and best of all, Australian. So, I mean, I'm assuming that's a slay. It's one of her favorites.
Like to me.
Holly P always knows what's going on. And then over on Bluesky, we had David Demchuk write in, and he just said slay for this one. And we also had Nathalia write in with one simple word that said slay. So apparently,
like I said, there's a very strong cult following behind this one.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic that more people than I thought know about this. So with that, why don't we stroll on over to the horrific hotline where, as always, Nicholas left us a voicemail.
I've watched Lake Mungo for the second time now. Has been years since I watched it first. And overall, I am a little bit disappointed after my high expectations from when I was a teenager. It seemed to drag on a little bit. And there's one thing I really, didn't like, though in some ways it makes it it is very good for a mockumentary, and that is the fact that at the end of the movie or throughout the movie there are several reveals which are not revealed at the start, but kind of like a plot twist, which is something actual documentaries do just as well, and it annoys me in an actual documentary just as much as it did in this movie. But maybe that's just my personal taste. Overall, I think the movie actually manages to mirror a documentary very well, with a lot of interviews, some intercut footage. The footage is actually not in the best quality, which is something I really appreciate, especially looking at modern found footage films. And yes, found footage mockumentary, but it's kind of like almost the same for me, which always looks like 4K, high definition, whatever. And here the footage is really grainy and you have to really zoom in and experiment. So overall, it's still an interesting watch. I think it manages to do what it wants to do, but what it wants to do is what I don't really like about the movie. So it's hard for me to actually grade the movie. I think the movie on its level, I'd give it a yay, because it is a decent mockumentary. There are a few very interesting things and
I sense
also
a
one or
butt
two
coming
scary
here.
moments. But as a movie, for my personal enjoyment, I'm more at an okay.
Yes, Nicholas.
Because the second time was enough for me. I'm not sure I'm gonna rewatch this anytime soon. Though I might be convinced if other people really want to see it, because I'm interested in the opinion other people have about it, because I know it's kind of like a hidden gem for a lot of horror fans. Well, anyways, that's about it. Hear from you soon.
That's
well,
right,
you're
Colton.
lucky, Nicholas, because my next pick, Lake Mungo.
Oh my god.
Like Mungo again.
Mungo, whatever.
Like mango.
What I'm going to say is I think it's cute that after calling into the show probably 20 times at least, he didn't know how to end that one. He was trapped at the end of that voicemail.
So Nicholas did write in his when he sent it in, he wanted us to, because he was sure we were going to talk about found footage and mockumentaries, but he wanted to know if we could talk about our less known highlights. And he had mentioned the Poughkeepsie tapes and wasn't sure if, like Lake Mungo, this would, if Poughkeepsie tapes would hold up on a second watch. But yeah, what we thought were like found footage, mockumentary, like hidden gems. Anybody
Let
got
Colton
something?
go first. He's the king of found footage.
Oh my god, I'm gonna steal somebody else's pick is gonna be the issue. But yeah, I love found footage stuff. This is like myself and one of the patrons, Mark's big thing. We love watching found footage horror movies or found footage like anthologies and whatnot. So some underseen found footage ones right off the top, I would say, is there was a short that kind of went viral earlier this year called Milk and Cereal. Where
this is on my list to watch.
Yeah, so that's one from earlier this year where it's like a full hour long, but it kind of follows almost like in the framing of like influencers kind of taking them down a notch. But it actually is quite frightening where it's kind of like one of the people you've been following might also be a serial killer. So Milk and Cereal, that one's really good. Of a similar vein, also like able to be seen on YouTube, is one called My House Walkthrough by Piero Pito, which is just a little like 10-minute, I think, short. Yeah, 12 minutes. It's foreign language called My House Walkthrough, and essentially it's almost like that game PT to a certain degree, like, you know, that's from years and years ago, where it's kind of capturing kind of the degradation of this house and something might be happening in there. And it's very unassuming when you throw it on, but you can just kind of tell that there's something wrong. That I really enjoyed as well. Some other ones that obviously, once you get to the feature film realm, like things are a little bit more easily accessible, like Incantation from a couple years ago. Like I absolutely love that. I think that's a Thai found footage horror movie, if I'm not mistaken. Ganjiam, Haunted Asylum. I believe that was a Korean one, if I'm not mistaken, from a few years ago. That was also really good. Noroi, The Curse, which I'm surprised we haven't reviewed that on the show, but that's another like cult classic that a lot of people hold in very high esteem. And then getting even more, commercial. Creep 1 and 2. I love those movies.
I've never seen those either.
The Creep tapes just came out, and I haven't actually checked out any of those. But Creep 1 and 2 are definitely my thing. You know, medium. We reviewed that a year ago. And then I guess I'll throw one out just in case there's anyone out here who loves the Sam Squanch, the Sasquatches. I always wanted to see a nice Sasquatch movie, and I don't think they really exist. But there's one from a few years ago that's a found footage one called Willow Creek. In typical Sasquatch fashion, you'll probably sit around for 90 minutes and see nothing. But, who knows? Someone might get dragged off into the forest near the end or something and, make it worthwhile. So yeah, those are a few of my found footage horror picks. I'm sure there's shit I'm missing. It was just a quick scroll through a list on Letterboxd there to see what I've seen. Jill, you said you had one that you wanted to recommend.
The one that I don't know, I think it is a little bit mainstream. I've seen it on a lot of people's lists, but it's called As Above, So Below. And it takes place in the Paris catacombs. So I really like that one. Actually, it's on my list for the show at some point. So hear more about it then when we talk about it. But
just count yourselves lucky. I haven't chosen Willow Creek yet.
I can't wait.
Sam Squatches.
And Rowan?
Yeah, I had a couple. I had a couple where I cheated a little bit. I did some unconventional ones. So one that was really popular when it came out, but then died pretty much instantly, that I remember really enjoying, was Host.
I agree. I almost mentioned that one, but it's a little bit more commercial or,
from Shudder, obviously, like the beginning of COVID-19, it hit, and I remember everyone was talking about it. And then obviously
structured around a Zoom call as well, so it was like almost exactly 40 minutes long. Very clever.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one. Obviously, we brought up a bunch of times in this episode, but The Medium obviously has to always be mentioned. Fantastic. That was,
that was amazing.
One of my favorite films that we've reviewed. Yeah. I also really enjoyed 13 Cameras, which...
Oh, I don't think I've heard of that one.
So this is like a found footage about like a newlywed couple that move into a house and, they're kind of renting it. They don't own it and, discover bad things. But it's all done with like security cameras. Gotcha. And I watched it one night, really enjoyed it, had a good time with it. It's I don't know if it's like, chill you to the bone. It's more kind of just like a good horror romp for found footage. And then my last two, which are unconventional. One is, both you can just go on YouTube. One, just watch a compilation of the home videos from Sinister and just that lawnmower. Just, that's the most found footage scare that you will ever need in your life, really. And then what's kind of funny, it's similar to Colton, his My House walkthrough, is myhouse.wad, which is a hour and 40-minute kind of mockumentary. What would you call them? A YouTube essay, basically, on a guy's friend who passed away and modded a Doom level that just like never ends. And it's a whole story that, like, is it real? Is it not real? I said it's a mockumentary style, so it's obviously, not real, but it's told in one of these like analog horror ways, and it's one of the most fascinating, awesome things I've ever watched. I was entranced the whole time. I highly suggest if you're going to watch it like, I watched it at like 4 a.m. in the morning when I'm like groggy, and that's how you want to watch that stuff, because it's like creepy, it's weird, and you're like watching levels of Doom over and over again, but like little things are happening that you're just like barely recognizing. Things are changing till it just gets weird and abstract. And I just highly suggest going to check that out.
Yeah, that seems right up my alley. I recognize the thumbnail, but I've never seen it for myself.
Well, go watch it, fella.
If you want to leave a voicemail like Nicholas, you can do so by sending your voicemail to itslacedpodcast@gmail.com and or message us on our socials at itslacedpodcast, and we'll make sure that it makes the show. And if you're not following us already, you can do so at It Slays Podcast. We're on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, / your Letterboxd, Threads, Bluesky. If there's a social media, we're probably there at It Slays Podcast. And if you want to help support the show financially, like our horror hounds, Holly, Nicholas, Patrick, Mark, Stephen, Joy, Dan, Brian, Trevor, and James, gain access to the Patreon exclusive show Stream Screams, hosted by Jill, and get episodes of this here main show 48 hours early. Be sure to head on over to patreon.com / It Slays Podcast and choose whatever tier works best for you. Rowan, we did mention the music in this, but I doubt there's a soundtrack for this thing.
I'm looking at it. Someone has a playlist that says actual Lake Mungo soundtrack.
Oh, all right.
It doesn't look convincing. It is all one artist, it seems. I'll take a listen. If it is, maybe it will get added to the playlist.
It's probably just nature sounds from the Lake Mungo area.
Yeah, probably. But yeah, you can go to Spotify and go to the It Slays Podcast Horrific playlist. If you have any problems finding it, you can go to any of the social media that Colton just mentioned. Go into the bio, click the Linktree link. It'll take you directly there. We upload scores and licensed music from horror movies we review, horror movies we love, or just horror movies in general. And yeah, go follow the playlist because we update it regularly. And why the hell not? And with that, all that is left is to announce our upcoming episode, and it's my pick. And I already said Colton's going to groan and all this, and I've switched my mind a bunch of times. So I'm going to kind of make you guys do a little work. It's like a double feature, but not a double feature. So I was inspired. If you're from Canada, you'll notice that Cineplex for the month of January is doing David Fincher month, and they're playing David Fincher films.
I'm not groaning yet. I'm not groaning yet.
Oh, you will. So, I really wanted to bring it back. I was like, I haven't picked a franchise movie in a while, push our franchises along. So I want us to watch the normal cut and the Fincher cut of Alien 3, which is, world famous for Fincher disowning it, but he does have his own cut of it. Yeah. We're going to get on that Alien train, fellas.
Are they different enough to warrant like a full watch each?
100%. I've seen both, and it makes it a totally different movie in tone and characters, everything.
Oh, God. All right, then. Here we go.
So that is going to be the goal. I know Mike's going to be excited for it. And, I might see who
No, he's not. It's going to be like 4 hours of watching. He's not going to be excited about that.
And he's going to get the wrong cut and watch like an extra long one on top of it.
Oh, I know Mike has the same copy as I do, so we've got both cuts. But yeah, I thought, it'd be kind of interesting to, Fincher's movies aren't ever really into like full out horror, and this is probably the closest he's done, and it's just interesting because, it's the one movie he's kind of disowned. So I think it'll be a good time. So yeah, get Alien 3, both cuts if you want. I guess you could just watch one cut and then listen to us talk about it. Get that into your eye hole, and we will be back. Thank you for all the support. As always, I am your humble host, Rowan.
I'm not impressed, and I'm Colton.
Happy New Year. It's Jill.
See you later.